I'd like to teach you about the screen blend mode specifically and what it's kind of good for. So in this particular image, I'd like to add kind of a fake little sunrise peeking over the tip of this mountaintop here. And I'm going to use the lens flare filter to actually achieve that. So let's go to the filter menu and we'll pull down to render over to lens flare. And this gives you a little tiny preview where you can position the lens flare exactly where you want it. So I'm going to kind of position it right there and position peeking over that little mountain type there. You can of course change the brightness value and how hot and bright you want that lens flare to be. I'll just leave it at the default 100%. And you've got a couple different types of lens flares available to you. I'm going to go ahead and just choose the default again, the 50 to 300 millimeter zoom. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And great, there's the cheesy effect. Not exactly what we wanted though, because we've burned that lens flare on the original background layer, which means I've damaged those pixels. If I change my mind and want to reposition that lens flare, I can't do it because I've burned that into the original layer. So let's undo that. Edit, undo, or Command Z, Control Z. And instead, let's create a new layer and fill it with black. Now, when I click the new button, I get a new layer that's transparent. It's filled with nothing. It's got just transparent areas in it. It's called layer 1. I'm going to undo that, Command Z. Rather than just clicking on the new layer icon, I'm going to hold down that Make Better key in Photoshop. It's the Option or Alt key. I'm going to Option or Alt click on the new icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. And this gives me a chance to name the layer. So I'm going to call it Lens Flare. And also gives me the opportunity to choose a blend mode for that particular layer. For now, I'm going to keep it at normal. Okay, go ahead and click OK. And I want to fill this with black. So I'm going to use my Edit Fill command, Edit, Fill, and we'll choose black as our contents. Go ahead and click OK, and the layer is filled with black. So it's covering up that background layer. Let's go to the filter menu, and you'll notice that the last filter you ran is always listed at the very top of that menu. And if you just want to run it again, you can just choose that from the top of the menu list there. So we'll just go ahead and choose Lens Flare from the top of the list. You'll see I get the exact same lens flare I had the first time I chose the filter, but now I've applied this to a black background on a separate layer. It sure would be nice if there was a way to make all those black pixels disappear on this particular layer, leaving only the effect of the lens flare. Well, I know, we'll get our Magic Wand tool, right? We'll click on the Magic Wand tool and we'll click on the black areas and then hit delete, right? No, not so much. We'll go ahead and undo that. Instead of making a selection and actually deleting those pixels, we want Photoshop just to imagine that those black pixels didn't exist. To do that, that's why we learn about blend modes. Which blend mode ignores black? Well, that would be one of the screen blend modes, one of the lighten blend modes. And we'll choose screen. And as soon as we do that, those black pixels act as if they're not even there. So I get the same visual result as applying the lens flare to the background layer directly. But if I get my Move tool, I now have the flexibility of having that lens flare on a separate layer, which means I can reposition it, I can lower its opacity, I can transform it, scale it, I can do whatever I want to it, hide it, change its visibility, and so forth. So you have the flexibility of layers, taking advantage of a particular blend mode that ignores a specific color, in this case black, giving you a lot more flexibility. Now, whether or not you're going to ever add a lens flare to your particular image is kind of irrelevant. I wanted to give you a visual example of why the screen blend mode is very helpful at times. It ignores dark stuff.